What's going on, guys? My name is Wade with TechDaily. I've got to be honest, I'm not hugely excited about the regular iPhone 14 this year. I'm personally an iPhone user. I do get the newest one every single year, but this year it almost feels like Apple just kind of gave up. This is easily the least upgraded new iPhone that's been released yet. It has the fewest new things. I wasn't really expecting anything groundbreaking, I guess. The same old design was expected amongst other things, but there's really no must-have upgrades, no wow factor. And actually, the most insulting thing is the fact that Apple didn't even bother to put their newest processor in this new iPhone. They got last year's A15 Bionic chipset, and Apple has never done this before. The newest iPhone that isn't a budget device like the 5C or the SE has always gotten an updated processor. To me, this means that not even Apple can fake it till they make it with newer, better, faster marketing terms, or at least that speed and performance have reached their effective limit. But if that's the case, they should have made it up somewhere else. They didn't, though. This is effectively the same iPhone from start to finish as it was a year ago, and I'd even argue it's the same iPhone from 2 years ago. The iPhone 12 was the last new regular iPhone to see substantial upgrades. Since then, I haven't had much of a reason to justify getting a new iPhone. And that's a shame. I think the excitement of upgrading every single year is long gone. It probably makes more sense to get a new phone every 3 or 4 years now. So if you have an iPhone 12 or an iPhone 13, you should probably skip this one. You aren't missing out. But if you have an older iPhone, like a 10 or an 11, I also don't think you should get the iPhone 14. Why spend so much extra money, $800, on a phone that's no different than the $500 or $600 iPhones from previous years that are kind of on sale now that, by the way, Apple still does sell? I can't think of a reason to get the iPhone 14, but maybe I'm missing something. Let me know. In the meantime, I'm going to dive a little deeper here with my thoughts on this phone. I'll talk about my experience with it. I'll break down how this phone compares to the 12 and the 13 as well, so you can make sure you're getting the right device if you're trying to upgrade. And if you want to also save a bunch of money on your wireless bill, I would highly recommend switching to Tello, who were kind enough to sponsor this video. Tello offers affordable and fully customizable phone plans, so you pay for exactly what you need only when you need it. Tello offers unlimited data plans starting at just $29 a month, which, by the way, is cheaper than ever. They just lowered their prices. I don't know any company that's done that. Tello delivers 4G LTE and 5G coverage nationwide, so you get the same great coverage as one of those big wireless companies at a fraction of the cost. You also get free hotspot and Wi-Fi calling and international calls to more than 60 countries. There's no fees, no commitments. You can cancel at any time or make adjustments on the go. And best of all, Tello makes it super easy to bring your current phone on over. Most GSM or unlocked devices are eligible. You can check their website to see if your device will work. Tello is one of the most flexible and affordable phone plans out there, and they're highly rated by their current customers. Create your custom plan and see how much you can save at Tello.com, or click the link below in the video description. And thanks so much again to Tello for sponsoring this video. So like I mentioned at the start, this year's new iPhone 14 kind of looks like last year's old iPhone 13 and the iPhone 12 and the iPhone 11, really. Apple is definitely a creature of habit, and I don't think anyone was expecting a drastic new design with the iPhone 14. The design change, if you can even call it that, was given to the pros with their new dynamic island notch. And while there's some comfort and familiarity in this iconic iPhone form factor, everyone knows that notch. It no doubt looks dated compared to a vast majority of other smartphones on the market now, at least from the front. Around back, Apple seems to always want to entice you with a new color, for the iPhones at least. This is this year's shade of blue, but again, beyond that, this is essentially the same fit and finish as previous regular iPhones. That's not a bad thing though. The iPhone is still premium, glass, aluminum, all that jazz, but you wouldn't know this is the latest device just by glancing at it. Or maybe you would if you knew where to look. On the side of the new iPhone 14, at least here in the US, you might pick out the fact that Apple did get rid of the SIM card tray this year. If you don't notice the physical change, you'll absolutely notice all the pain, misery, and frustration in trying to set up eSIM on your new iPhone 14. So first, let me just say that without a doubt, this is the most frustrating and unnecessary change to come on an iPhone ever. Seriously, it exceeds the switch to Lightning. It doesn't even come close to the removal of the headphone jack. It is so ridiculous to have to deal with a new SIM card setup when the old way, a physical SIM card, was significantly better, more convenient, and relatively problem-free. Let me just walk you through some of the things I experienced. If you're on a prepaid carrier, Apple's eSIM migration tools will not work at all, plain and simple. You need to follow some specific steps that pertain to your unique prepaid carrier, and every single one is a little different. If you're on one of the big name brand networks, you may have a 50-50 chance of it working, but on one of my new iPhone 14s, it took my eSIM 2 hours to activate. In the meantime, the physical SIM card I did have in my old phone was deactivated, so I couldn't even go back to it. And God forbid you delete your eSIM profile from your iPhone 14 without first transferring it to another device or requesting a physical SIM card. You may actually lose your cell service indefinitely, or until you go to a physical carrier store to fix the mess. eSIM is not the simple and easy virtual carrier setup that it's perceived to be. It's not user-friendly, there's too many factors that contribute to it going wrong, and it's not easy for the average consumer to understand or set up. It's a bad move, and I anticipate a lot of frustrated new iPhone 14 users dealing with this with the incoming holiday season. So you can't really tell you have the new iPhone from the outside, but I also don't think you'd be able to tell that this is the latest iPhone by using it either, which probably sounds pretty harsh, but it's true. The 6.1-inch display on this phone is effectively the same 6.1-inch display as last year's iPhone. A strange 2532 by 1170 resolution Super Retina XDR OLED screen that honestly looks plenty good. There's nothing really wrong with it. Apple's OLED panel is super colorful, and actually making the jump to OLED on the iPhone 12 was probably the last worthwhile spec upgrade to make it to these regular iPhones. But beyond that, it's no brighter, no sharper, and no smoother than previous regular iPhone displays. The Pros this year get a super bright screen that's way better in direct sunlight. They also get the ProMotion 120Hz refresh rate. What you see and what you interact with on this phone is exactly what we've had for really the last 2 years and then some. And like I said, while there's objectively nothing wrong, there's also nothing special or new either. Now, the single biggest gut punch with the regular iPhone this year, in my opinion, was the fact that Apple chose not to use their latest A16 Bionic chipset inside to power it. That was also reserved for the Pros. And instead, this phone got the old parts bin treatment, last year's A15 Bionic processor. Now, Apple did finally bump up the RAM to a whopping 6 gigs on these new iPhones, but the main player, the processor, is all the same. Sure, they changed the architecture and improved the efficiency a little to sorta kinda make it seem like an upgrade, but it's simply not, and this is a move that really surprised me. If this were the iPhone SE or some newer, lower tier budget iPhone, then I'd be okay with it. But this is the iPhone, the newest smartphone from Apple. And for a company that loves to tout performance and show off all kinds of questionable speed graphs in their keynotes, this is just a bad look. What it says to me is that they've peaked. They've peaked with performance, or with speed, or with iOS optimization, and that maybe the average iPhone user wouldn't notice or maybe doesn't care about the latest processor anymore. And there may be some truth to that. The newest iPhones haven't been significantly or measurably faster than previous ones in recent years, but that's never really been the point. I'd also argue that Apple is probably looking to differentiate these regular iPhones from the Pro iPhones a bit more, since, let's be honest, there's not a whole lot that separates them at this point that's useful. So I also wouldn't be surprised if the regular iPhones start to become less and less spec or feature focused compared to the Pros. Any way you want to look at it, the main point is that this iPhone 14 just isn't any faster, better, or more optimized performance-wise than last year. It's not an opinion, it's a fact. And that means that performance or internal specs are not a reason to upgrade to this phone. It's really bizarre to say that, especially when you consider the fact that it's sort of the core fundamentals of a tech device. If you aren't upgrading the internal components, if it isn't getting any faster or more powerful or better in any way, where does that really leave us? Okay, so what is actually new on the iPhone 14s? Well, Apple implemented new emergency SOS features, and I'm not going to joke about this, it's a great add-on. You can dial 911 and get help even if you don't have cell service via satellite. You can share your location in remote areas. There's crash detection, so the phone can detect if you've been in like a car accident or some sort of violent fall and will automatically dial 911. Now, yes, people on roller coasters were also alerting emergency services with this feature due to all the rapid motions, but these are great new add-ons, and I have have no doubt that this will be important for a number of people moving forward. The battery life on the iPhone 14 is also improved-ish. Apple puts out their own battery estimates, but in real-world use, while everyone plays with their iPhone differently, you could probably expect about an extra hour or so of use out of the 14 versus last year's 13. That's nothing crazy. It's not like this phone is a 2-day device. The battery size remained about the same compared to last year. It's just a better optimized phone with iOS 16 and the slightly upgraded processor architecture. That's really it, and I don't think I'd consider that a significant change. The thing that Apple seems to be most concerned with on the iPhones nowadays is with the camera. More so on the pros, I think people know that, but the iPhone 14 sees some camera improvements too. The hardware is all the same. A 12 megapixel main lens with a slightly better aperture, 12 megapixel ultra wide that looks to be identical, and a 12 megapixel selfie camera that again seems to be a slightly different lens, but nothing major. Inside the camera app, Apple didn't really bring about any new features or shooting modes. Pretty much everything you have here is what we've had before. The upgrades come though with some real world picture and videos, and there's a few things to look out for. In low light and nighttime conditions, the iPhone 14 is no doubt improved. This phone takes some great nighttime pictures across the board, and the days of the Pro iPhone being the one for nighttime shots are long gone. The low light improvements are really across the board. The ultra wide is better at night, the selfie camera too, and that's great. With video, the iPhone 14 is also more stabilized. There's better image stabilization to reduce the shakes and vibrations and jitters. Action mode allows you to basically run with your iPhone and keep the image still. But honestly, iPhones have always taken amazingly still video, so I don't consider that a huge upgrade. And beyond those two changes, well, that's sort of it. A number of features, like a telephoto lens and better zoom capabilities, and macro mode for up-close pictures are still reserved for the Pro iPhones. Like I said, there's no crazy powerful new capabilities, no real upgrades to the shooting modes, the features, the filters, the functions. It's not that significant, even if Apple wants you to think that way. Is the camera overall better than the 13? Sure, but for most people, I don't think it makes much of a difference. So if it wasn't already obvious, I genuinely see no reason at all to upgrade to this year's iPhone 14. Whether you have last year's 13 or something older, this is a phone you should skip. And I'm critical of this phone this year because for the average person, there's nothing this phone offers that makes any real difference versus the 13 or even the 12. That's super disappointing, and I want to make sure people are spending their hard-earned money on something that's worth it. This phone ain't it. And for Apple, this is absolutely the most disappointing new iPhone they've launched yet. There may have been some reason they took this route, supply chain issues, a pandemic, whatever it may be, but I don't really like the direction the iPhone is going right now, and I worry that before long, this regular iPhone may all of a sudden become the budget iPhone, and all the focus with the specs and improvements will be on the $1,000 plus Pro iPhones. But what do you guys think? Am I being too harsh? Let me know what you think of the iPhone 14 in the comments down below. I'd love to hear your thoughts, of course. Hopefully you guys did enjoy this video though. Be sure to follow TechDaily on Twitter and subscribe to the TechDaily YouTube channel if you haven't already, and I'll see you guys later.